What happened to the freedmen? A brief history about Native Americans and the freedmen. What most people don't know is that Native Indians were used as slaves until it was banned in 1776. Some reasons as to why the natives weren't the ideal slaves to the Europeans is because they would quickly get sick. The colonists brought diseases that the natives have never dealt with before, which led many to die. Another reason is that the Indians could quickly escape because they knew the land and the colonists did not. Once the European settlers began to use more African slaves, a new fear started to rise. The fear they had was that the natives and the African slaves would cause an uprising. It is because of this irrational fear that the colonists sought out to create hostility between the two groups of people. They tried to convince the slaves that natives were bad and convince the natives that if they hunt down escaped slaves, they would be rewarded. Some rewards would be blankets, deerskins, weapons, and more. The 5 tribes that participated in having African slaves were the Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Creek. These tribes were encouraged by the European colonists as a way to increase the separation between the two. At the time, European colonists saw a great threat if both the African slaves and the Native Americans were to join forces. What the colonists failed to realize is that these tribes did not treat the African slaves the same as the colonists did, for the Creek tribe gave their slaves freedom when they married. It was during this time of slavery that slaves from South Carolina and Georgia began to run away to Florida, because Florida at the time was owned by Spain. Some Seminole people also ran away to Florida to escape their own oppression. Soon the two groups of people began to learn to live together. It all started in 1830 with President Andrew Jackson and the signing of the Indian Removal Act. The Removal Act made it legal for the U.S. government to start forcing the natives to move west of the Mississippi River to Oklahoma. In the winter of 1831, the U.S. government invaded the Choctaw tribe first and then proceeded to other tribes. Another treaty was signed, and it was the Treaty of New Echota by the Cherokee tribe. This treaty was not welcomed by everyone, for many Cherokees wanted to stay on their land and thought it would cause more trouble to leave. The treaty promised compensation of $5 million to the tribe. During the removal process, the U.S. government ransacked and stole from the native people's homes. With brute force and military backup, they marched the Native Americans and black people 1,200 miles in the blistering winter of 1831 to Oklahoma. 18% of the population during the Trail of Tears was made of African Americans. Some were slaves and some were freedmen. The military used chains on some tribes while forcefully marching them from their homeland. They had very little food and water and owned very few clothing that could protect them from the cold. Thousands of men, women, and children died from diseases, starvation, and the bitter cold. In 1885, the Choctaw Nation had officially adopted the black freemen and granted them citizenship. A year later, the Treaty of 1886 was created by the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations. When regarding about the freedmen in the treaty and about them being a part of the tribes, this was said. The said nations further agreed that all Negroes not otherwise disqualified or disabled shall be competent witnesses in all civil and criminal suits and proceedings in the Choctaw and Chickasaw courts. Any law to the contrary notwithstanding, and they fully recognize the right of the freemen to a fair remuneration on reasonable and equitable contracts for their labor, which the law should aid them to enforce. And they agree on the part of their respective nations that all laws shall be equal in their operation upon Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Negroes, and that no distinction affecting the latter shall at any time be made, and that they shall be treated with kindness and be protected against injury. And they further agree that while the said freemen, now in the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations, remain in said nation, respectively. They shall be entitled to as much land as they may cultivate for the support of themselves and families, and in case where they do not support themselves and families by hiring, not interfering with existing improvements without the consent of the occupant. It being understood that in the event of the making of the laws, rules, and regulations aforesaid, the 40 acres aforesaid shall stand in place of the land cultivated as last aforesaid. The article basically states that the freedmen in those nations are now citizens and that they have equal rights to the land. Up to this point, we have seen how the relationship of the Native Americans and Black people has prospered. We have seen the history between the two and the struggles they faced together. Both groups of people faced oppression due to their race. They were slaves, and both groups of people were stripped of their homelands and forced to move to a place where they never wanted to be in the first place. Despite all the events that took place, one tribe has yet to grant citizenship. The Seminole tribe were the last of the civilized tribes to grant citizenship to the Black Indians. During the time of Jim Crow laws, the U.S. government took charge when dealing with African Americans, which included those with Indian blood. It is because of the one-drop rule that the U.S. government obeyed that even the freedmen children had to go to school for Black children. The Dawes Rule helped with segregation to a point. The Dawes Rule supposedly keeps track of family history and who can claim to be Indian. This caused some serious problems for many reasons. The main reason being is because it prevents Black freedmen from claiming their tribe. Along with the Dawes Rule was the Freedmen Rule. It was like the Dawes Rule, but for people who look Black, regardless of their ancestry. It is because of this that prevents many people from knowing their true history and claiming to be Indian. It is because of these rules that sparked many controversies on who can claim to be Indian. This can be very troubling for people to prove themselves if their ancestors weren't written down in the Dawes Rule. Throughout the years, freedmen have fought for their rights to be in their respective tribes. Even to this day, they fight to be seen as citizens to their tribe. In the year 2007, the Cherokee tribe voted that to be a member of the tribe, it has to be by blood. Had this vote passed, 2,800 freedmen would have no longer been part of the Cherokee tribe. Luckily, the U.S. government opposed this. Another recent event is in regards to the Creek freedmen. In 1979, the Creek Nation had revised their constitution, which made the Black freedmen no longer a part of their tribe and stripped them of their citizenship. In present day, Black freedmen Creeks are now petitioning for their own tribe in Oklahoma. This concludes my video research presentation, and I hope you all enjoyed.